It's the middle of the night. You're an ancient human, lying in the dark. No walls, no screen, no protection. And in the air around you is the single most dangerous animal that has ever existed on planet Earth. Not a lion, not a bear, not a snake. Something so small you could crush it with one finger. And it has killed more human beings than every war, every famine, and every natural disaster in all of recorded history combined. The mosquito. So picture yourself there. The buzzing closing in, your skin exposed, and no way to know that the tiny bite you're about to feel could carry a death sentence. How on earth did your ancestors survive for hundreds of thousands of years? With no medicine, no science, no idea what was even happening? So how did ancient humans survive the deadliest animal in history? Because the answer isn't one clever trick. It's a layered, brutal, brilliant survival story that ends with something almost the moment our ancestors' own blood started changing to fight back. But first, before I tell you, take a guess. What do you think has killed more humans than anything else in history? Drop your answer in the comments now, then see if you were right. Let's start with just how dangerous this tiny enemy really is, because the scale is hard to believe. We think of the deadliest animals as the big, scary ones. Sharks, crocodiles, big cats, but line up every human killed by every large predator across all of history, and it doesn't even come close. The mosquito sits at number 1 by such an enormous margin that everything else is fighting for second place. Some popular estimates claim mosquito-borne disease may have killed tens of billions of people across human history, a number so large it's heavily debated and honestly impossible to prove. But even the cautious conservative numbers are staggering. This one insect has shaped human death more than any weapon we ever invented. And here's the cruel part. The mosquito itself isn't even trying to hurt you. It doesn't carry a grudge. It's just a delivery system for parasites and viruses that hitch a ride in its bite. The mosquito is the messenger. The message is what kills you. So how did fragile, slow, soft-skinned humans survive an enemy this perfect? One they couldn't even see coming. It started with something they didn't understand at all. Where not to live. But first, a strange fact. Mosquitoes didn't always hunt us. We had to teach them to. For most of their history, and mosquitoes are ancient, older than the dinosaurs' extinction. They fed on whatever was around. Reptiles, early mammals, swamp creatures. Humans weren't on the menu because humans didn't exist yet. Then we showed up, and it turns out, to a mosquito, we smell incredible. Humans give off a very specific chemical signature, a blend of carbon dioxide, body heat, and the unique cocktail of compounds on our skin. To a female mosquito's senses, that signal is like a glowing sign that says warm blood, this way. Over time, certain mosquito species evolved to specifically lock onto the smell of humans. Right around the time our ancestors started spreading across the land in large numbers, we became so reliable a meal that the mosquito tuned itself to find us. And you felt this yourself. Ever notice how at a barbecue one person gets devoured while the guy next to them barely gets touched? That's not luck. It's the chemistry of your skin. The exact mix of bacteria and compounds you give. Some humans simply smell like a better meal. Your ancestors couldn't change that. They had to outsmart it instead, and the first way they outsmarted it was genius, because they did it without understanding a single thing about why it worked. Here's the puzzle. The most dangerous mosquitoes, the ones carrying deadly disease, breed in warm, wet, and low-lying land near standing water. And when researchers compare where those danger zones were to where ancient humans actually chose to live, something remarkable shows up. They don't overlap. Again and again, people settled on higher, drier ground and avoided the swampy death traps, even though they had no microscopes, no germ theory, no idea that parasites even existed. So how did they know? They didn't. Not as individuals, but the group knew. This is collective wisdom, built over thousands of years. The family that camped too close to the marsh. The group that settled in the wet valley and lost half its children by the next season. Nobody understood malaria, but everyone learned, fast, that the valley kills you. And that lesson got passed down, not in books, but in story, in warning, in the deep cultural rule. Stay on the high ground, don't sleep near still water. Quick one for the comments. This might be the oldest piece of public health advice in human history. Don't sleep near standing water. Did your grandparents ever pass down a survival rule like this without explaining why? Tell me. But you can't always live on a dry hill. Sometimes the water, the food, the resources were down in the danger zone, and humans had to live right alongside the enemy. So they reached for the oldest weapon they had, fire. Specifically, smoke. Sit by a campfire and you get fewer bites. And ancient humans noticed this long before they could explain it. Here's the actual reason. A mosquito hunts by smelling you. Your carbon dioxide, your body heat, your skin chemistry. Smoke scrambles all of that. It floods the air with chemicals that jam the mosquito's senses, so she simply can't find you. That campfire wasn't just warmth and light in the dark. It was an invisible chemical shield, blinding every biting insect around the camp. They didn't know the mechanism. They knew the result. Near the smoke, you don't get bitten. And we still do exactly this today. That mosquito coil you light on a summer evening, That smoking citronella bucket on the patio. It's the same ancient trick. Fire against the swarm, 100,000 years later. And then they took it further, into something that looks a lot like the world's first medicine cabinet. Because ancient humans didn't just burn any wood. Across Africa, Asia, Australia, and the Americas, groups that never met, that shared nothing except the same problem, all independently figured out that burning specific plants kept the bugs away better than others. Think about what that means. Somewhere, someone noticed that this particular leaf on the fire meant less itching than that one. They told someone. The knowledge spread. Generation by generation, communities built up a detailed library of which plants to burn for protection. A plant-based pharmacy with zero formal science behind it. Just sharp observation and the very strong motivation of not being eaten alive. And modern science has actually tested this. When researchers burned mixtures of plants that these communities had used for thousands of years, the smoke cut mosquito numbers by over 90%, from plants growing wild in the dirt, discovered by people with no labs, no microscopes, nothing but patience and memory. They were right all along. The lab just confirmed what they already knew. But the most astonishing discovery isn't a fire at all. It's a bed, and it's 77,000 years old. Deep in a cave in South Africa called Sibudu, an archaeologist uncovered the remains of ancient bedding, layers of plants and ash, carefully laid down by early humans to sleep on. And when they studied the plants, they found something stunning. The leaves chosen for the top layer came from a tree that naturally repels and kills insects. These early humans weren't just grabbing any soft leaves. They were deliberately picking bug-killing plants to sleep on, and the bedding had been burned and remade again and again, torching the old bed to clear out the insects and parasites, then building a fresh one 77,000 years ago. That's our own species, barely out of the gate, already inventing a kind of natural pesticide for their bed. Nobody designed it in a lab. Somebody noticed that sleeping on these leaves meant fewer bites and fewer parasites, and that quiet observation became a habit, then a tradition, passed down through imitation for tens of thousands of years. Oh, and the mud trick. Across multiple continents, ancient humans smeared wet mud over their skin. It sounds primitive, but it's clever twice over. The mud is a physical wall the mosquito's mouth can't punch through, and it masks the human smell that draws them in. Mud basically was bug spray for people who had no bug spray. And then there's the invention so simple and so effective that we still hand it out to save lives today. The net. Thousands of years ago in ancient Egypt, people slept under fine mesh nets to keep the biting insects off through the night. In Asia, fishermen draped their fishing nets over themselves to sleep. In Japan, hanging mosquito nets became widespread centuries ago for hot, humid summers. And here's the telling part. No one taught these people each other's tricks. The mosquito net was invented over and over independently by completely separate cultures who shared only one thing. Something tiny was biting them at night, and they wanted it to stop. And get this, that same simple idea is, to this day, one of the most powerful, cheapest, life-saving tools in all of modern medicine. A basic net, treated with insecticide, costing just a few dollars, dramatically cuts childhood deaths from malaria in the highest risk parts of the world. The ancient Egyptians slept under a luxury version. Today, global health programs ship the very same concept by the millions as critical, life-saving infrastructure. Some inventions are so good, 10,000 years can't improve on them. But avoidance, smoke, plants, mud, nets, none of it was ever enough to fully stop the disease. The mosquito always found a way in, and so something extraordinary happened. When ancient humans couldn't beat the mosquito from the outside, their bodies started fighting back from the inside. This is the part that should give you chills. In populations that lived for thousands of years alongside deadly malaria, the most famous example is the sickle cell trait. Inherit 2 copies of this gene and you get sickle cell disease. Painful, dangerous, often deadly. But inherit just 1 copy and something strange happens. Your red blood cells become slightly misshapen in a way that makes it much harder for the malaria parasite to survive inside them. 1 copy is a shield. So in places where malaria was everywhere, that single gene spread through entire populations, because the people who carried it were more likely to survive and have children. And sickle cell is just the headline. Other genetic changes appeared the same way. Conditions like G6PD deficiency and thalassemia, found today in over hundreds of millions of people, concentrated almost exactly in the regions where malaria has raged the longest. The blood of entire populations was quietly rewritten, generation by generation, to survive an insect. Evolution made a brutal trade. Accept a genetic disease in exchange for a chance against a worse one. It's heartbreaking arithmetic, and it's a huge reason our species is still here at all. Think about that. The mosquito didn't just kill us, it reshaped us. It's written into human DNA right now in people walking around today. An insect that weighs almost nothing left its fingerprints inside the human body forever. So how did ancient humans survive the deadliest animal on Earth? Not with one genius invention. They survived it the hard way. By paying ferociously close attention for hundreds of thousands of years, with death as the price of getting it wrong. They learned which land would kill them. They sat by the smoke. They burned the right plants. They slept on beds of insect-killing leaves and smeared mud on their skin. They wove nets, and when all of that still wasn't enough, their very blood changed to meet the threat. Honestly, I think this is one of the most underrated survival stories there is. We picture our ancestors as helpless, fumbling around in the dark, one bad day from extinction. But this is the opposite. This is a species running a 100,000-year science experiment with no scientists, accumulating knowledge with no writing, sharing solutions with no institutions, and adapting genetically without the faintest idea what a gene even was. They lost billions of people to this fight, and they still won. We're still here. That tiny insect has survived everything this planet ever threw at it. And so, somehow did we. If this changed how you see the people you came from, subscribe. That's the whole point of this channel, the why behind being human. And if you want to see how these same people survived the killing heat, the freezing cold, the dark, hunger, predators, death itself, and old age, those videos are on screen right now. Go watch, because the mosquito was an enemy you could at least try to hide from. But there's one ordeal our ancestors faced that no fire, no net, and no hiding could ever protect them from the single most dangerous moment in any ancient human's life, being born. That's coming next.